Okay, welcome back to part 2 of the video. All right, so we've got an equation, an explicit equation for a geometric sequence. Explicit means that you can find any term in a sequence. So we've got the equation here for a geometric sequence. I went ahead and wrote also the equation for an exponential function because they're similar, but there's two very distinct differences. The first distinction is our initial value in the exponential function is x equals 0. That's our y-intercept. In the explicit rule for a geometric sequence, we don't have a zero term. We have the first term of a sequence. So we start at the first term. So our x value is 1 because that's our first term. So to make up for that, because we've started in a different term, in the geometric sequence, our exponent has to be n minus 1. The other thing they do to help you know that you're dealing with a sequence and not an exponential function is in sequences they use n's instead of x's. And so we have n minus 1. That tells you you're dealing with a geometric sequence, where in the exponential function our exponent is x. That tells you you're dealing with an exponential function. All right, so now we're just going to practice writing the equation, the geometric sequence equation, for 3 different ones. And all you really need to do is find your first term, find your ratio, and write your equation. When you write your equation, you're writing it a to the nth. That's for any term. And then go ahead and solve it for a to the 6th power. So I want you to pause your video to do number 6, number 7, and number 8, and then check back to see on the solution and explanation. Okay, just make sure that you got the 3 answers correct, and if not, figure out where you went wrong. On number 9, the hard part about number 9 is once they've given you the information and you've figured out the equation, they want you to figure out the number of clicks for 640 miles. So they've given you the y value, the answer, and they want to know the x value, the number of clicks. So the way you'll do that once you've come up with your explicit rule is you will put it into the y equals of your calculator, remembering to use x instead of n in the y equals button, and look at the table to find the answer. So pause your video while you do all the work and then check back for the answer and the explanation. Okay, so pretty much as long as you knew to put it into your calculator and did it with an x instead of an n, you should have been able to get that 8 clicks as the answer. Now, we've been talking about explicit rules, and explicit rules are rules that give you any term. Now we're going to talk about what we call recursive rules, which seems like a big word, but all recursive rules are doing are telling you what the very next term is. So when we look at number 10, it's giving us our first term. So we're going to start with -2 as our first term, and then it's given us the recursive sequence. It's given us the rule to find the next term. And the rule for finding the next term is we're multiplying the previous term, which is n minus 1. So the previous term we're multiplying times -2. So in this case, it's a little confusing because our starting term is -2 and our common ratio is -2. But -2, we're going to use our common ratio times -2. So -2 times -2 is 4 times our common ratio, so times -2. 4 times -2 is 8 times our common ratio one more time of -2. 8 times -2 is, let's see, negative, negative, positive. That should be a -8. -8 times -2 is positive 16. So I've actually written the first 4 terms of our sequence. Now I'd like you to do number 11 using the recursive rule to find the next term. So pause your video, find the first 3 terms of number 11, then start the video up to check your answers. Okay, so as long as you recognize that the common ratio was 3 and started with the first term of 4, and you just multiply each term times 3. Okay, number 12 and 13 are practice for you. Cross out the equations that were put in there and rewrite the two equations that you see on your screen in blue. Those are going to be the recursive rules I want you to use. The only really difficult thing about this, and it's just bringing it back into your brain, f of x, so our x value is 1, our y value is 8, so our first term is 8. And in this time, our first term is -1. So once you know that, I want you to go ahead and find the second, the fifth, and the 10th term of these two sequences. Pause your video while you do it and then check back for the answers. Okay, so just using our rule, our recursive rule, to find the next one in the sequence. On number 12, very quickly you could see it's going +8, -8, +8, -8. So to find my second, fifth, and 10th, I just looked at the pattern to see my odd terms were even numbers, my even terms were odd numbers. Then on number 13, I just filled out the table. I just kept multiplying each term times 2 until I got all the way down to get them all.